Hi class, this is Dr. Heather Austin Robillard, and this lecture video is going to be over the referral questions and problem statements for the substance abuse evaluation. Let's take a look at this graph again. So the assessment is a problem-solving and question and answer exercise. It culminates in the results and reflections of your thinking about this case. We've already gone over what is the purpose of the evaluation, as well as how to gather the information. Now we're going into the part where we're thinking about the answer to the question that was originally referred, as well as what is the answer to our question? What are our recommendations? We will do more on recommendations later on this semester, but we still want to understand in this part, what was our referral question and have we answered it? As a reminder, the referral question is the purpose for the evaluation and the research question that you need to address. We also need to recognize the practical issues, which we'll talk about in the next slide, and recognize that the evaluation is a research question. It is just applied to a N of one person. It requires a hypothesis-driven approach and conclusions that are supported by several supporting evidence. So let's discuss what practical matters are. This can be referring to how the client was referred to you. There are multiple different pathways that a client can be referred, maybe through their medical physician, a counselor. It could be their parents who are wanting it done, or the school, maybe a lawyer or judge. It could be for their medical health, their legal situation, or mental health and therapy, as well as academics or school. Other practical matters include where you've received this referral. You can receive it through text, telephone, email, fax. The reasons can be varied for why they are being referred as well. And then some other practical matters are the sources of funding. These can vary as well, including it could be from parents, insurance companies, scholarships, private pay. The funding also determines the ownership of the assessment and the primary audience. For example, if the insurance is requesting a substance abuse evaluation and they're paying for it, then they technically have ownership over that information. There are implicit and explicit reasons for practical matters. The referrals that are explicit are when a lawyer might refer a client for evaluation to see if they have a substance use disorder present. This can help them be eligible for a substance use disorder treatment. There can also be implicit or underlying reasons for the substance abuse evaluation. Maybe it's because the client wants to avoid jail time, and maybe it's because they need to provide support for their substance abuse treatment. We also have to recognize any competing interests. For example, are there competing interests among the people who are being referred or the different parties? Here's an example. Jake, a 17-year-old male, was referred for a substance use disorder assessment by his school counselor. Jake's parents share custody of him, and the mom is behind the assessment, and the dad was not. Dad is paying for Jake's medical insurance, and substance use assessment is covered in his medical insurance. The school wants the assessment before allowing Jake back into school. So we have multiple competing interests here. We have the school's interests, we have mom's interests, dad's interests, and the insurance's interests. And all of those can be competing on what they want. Here are some other practical matters, such as initiation and funding. Who made the referral? What is their occupation or role? Is it an organization? Knowledge about assessment and experience with assessment, and then who is paying for the assessment. All of this information needs to be noted because it can help you determine any bias that's being held. We also need to know the audience for these findings. Who's the primary audience and who's possible secondary audience? The explicit and implicit referral questions, anticipated functions of this report, or any other explicit or implicit questions this report can give. And then, of course, any competing varying interest. Who are the parties involved and what are their interests in this assessment? There's also practical matters when it comes to client and clinician attributes. Usually this is related to diversity issues. Client attributes can be their barrier to participation, attitudes about participation, or other relevant cultural issues. Clinical attributes, the clinician attributes can be anticipated challenges, feeling their own feelings and thoughts about the assessment, levels of confidence or degrees of anxiety, whether they need to learn more, or how do they go about learning more. Then there are larger system issues when it comes to practical matters. This is usually related to the familiarity with the larger system you are currently working in. For example, is the system you're working in at TTU HSC or Covenant? That might provide different information. What are their policies, operating procedures, norms on handling patients and clients with substance use disorders? All of these things help frame and conceptualize what your referral question is. The research question is, why are you doing the assessment, and what is the question trying to answer? How you write the evaluation or the substance abuse evaluation should take into account the practical matters. When you're doing a substance abuse evaluation, it's helpful to understand the different types or models of assessment. First, there is test-oriented model. Then there is domain-oriented model. And then there is hypothesis-tested model. This is the one that we primarily want to be using. The test-oriented model is a discussion is made per test. The test is mentioned and it tells us what it means. This is only a low level of skill is needed. It's just copying interpretive statements. The strength of this is there are clear results that come from it, and the weakness is there's no integration of other data. A domain-oriented model, tests are grouped and interpreted based on functional domains. For example, like intelligence tests or socio-mental, emotional tests. These are typically used if there's no clear purpose of an evaluation or the need for an evaluation. The strengths of this is it does give us areas of interest. However, the weakness is it's kind of a shotgun approach. The hypothesis testing model focuses on the possible answers to the referral question. What is the problem? What is the hypothesis of this problem? And then what are the proof of the hypotheses? The weakness is it's straight to the point and a lot of unnecessary information is lost. The strength is that it's straight to the point and a lot of unnecessary information is lost. When using a hypothesis, you generally have a general hypothesis on a broad subject. For example, does this person have a substance use disorder? Then you get preliminary answers, maybe through screening. Then you narrow down the hypothesis to get more answers. For example, you do an audit, then you interview to ask more questions about their history and about other things that are listed in the substance abuse evaluation. And then we get a clearer answer, like they do have a substance use disorder or they do not have a substance use disorder. With the general hypothesis of a broad subject, we want to use a broad battery of tests, get our preliminary answers, and then narrow down our hypothesis and get more confirmatory assessments or more specific measurements so that we can get the overall answer. It is very important to always use a battery of tests, which means using multiple tests that measure the same domain, because if you don't use a battery of tests, you might be getting a margin of error that you're not recognizing. When you use multiple of them, you're going to reduce the amount of error that you're receiving. This ends this lecture. I hope you've learned the understanding of why the referral question is important and how you write up your substance abuse evaluation. Thank you.